Flags. Flags represent a lot of things, but most notoriously countries, states, provinces, dependencies, political organizations, etc. But national flags are also used to represent languages, like the American flag representing English or the Brazilian flag representing Portuguese, and this is criticized a lot. Me personally, I do understand why national flags represent languages, and I do think they should still do, but there are some flaws with doing so that bother me too, and this is how I think they should be fixed. First things first, why are national flags used to represent languages? You see, languages don't have official flags most of the time, and even if they had, they probably wouldn't be recognized by most children as much as country flags. Actually, they probably wouldn't be recognized by most adults too, so it makes sense to use national flags instead. But the problem is that some languages are spoken by more than one country, such as English. English is the languages almost all people hear in Australia, and New Zealand, the United States, Canada, and of course, the United Kingdom. Most of the time, English is represented by the USA flag, which could bother native English speakers from other countries. The USA flag is used to represent English more frequently than the UK flag because the USA is the biggest Anglophone country in the world. Same thing goes for Brazil, which is the country most Lusophones are from. But then it could start to get tricky for languages like French. The biggest French-speaking country in the world by both size and population is the DR of Congo, but the country with the biggest number of French speakers is France itself. So which national flag should be used? My suggestion is quite simple. Using flags to represent the dialects of these languages. Let's suppose that you make an English version for a video game you created. You should use the flag of the country the English dialect you are using is from. If you're translating it to American English, use the USA flag. If you're translating it to British English, use the UK flag. If you're translating it to Australian English, use Australia's flag. You could also create versions for these three dialects and use these three flags I just mentioned. And if you want to make an English version for this video game that wants to sound as neutral as possible, use the UK flag. In other words, if a game gets localized in a neutral Spanish dialect by a studio from Spain, they should use the Spanish flag to represent their language, or if it is a studio from Argentina, the Argentine flag should be used, or if they are from Mexico, Venezuela, Chile, Colombia, the Dominican Republic, or whatever, they all should represent their language with their own country's flag. The only problem is that sometimes the country speaks more than one language. An example is Belgium. Most people speak French, but many people in the northern part of the country speak Flemish. By the way, check my video explaining if Flemish is a language or not. Limburgish and Brabanting Dutch, and near to the border with Germany the Belgians tend to speak German. If a Belgian studio were to translate a game in all of these languages, my idea is to use the Wallonia flag for French, the Flanders flag from Flemish, the Belgian Limburg flag for Limburgish, and the flag of the Belgian Tetophone community for German, because this is so fucking pretty. Another scenario is a country being more associated with a language, but another language being spoken regionally. Canada is more associated with English, but in Quebec people tend to speak French. Brazil is mostly Portuguese speaking, but in some parts of Rio Grande do Sul, Rio Grandense Huntsruckish is spoken. In Canada's case, if a video game were to be translated by a Canadian studio to English and French, English should be represented by the Canadian flag and French by the Quebecois flag. As Quebec is basically the only Canadian state to speak French, and this dialect of French is mostly referred to as Quebecois French. In Brazil's case, however, Rio Grandense Huntsruckish is spoken by some people in less populated cities from mostly Rio Grande do Sul, but also Santa Catarina and Espírito Santo. I guess using the Rio Grande do Sul flag would make more sense, but most people from Rio Grande do Sul only speak Portuguese, so I think Rio Grandense Huntsruckish should be represented by the flags of one of the cities the language is present, and I would pick the flag of Santa Maria do Herval, also known as Hipal, because I like it the most. So basically, when countries' flags are meant to portray languages in translations such as localization of video games and TV shows, the flag of the country the dialect and or the translation is from should be used. If not possible due to the country not being very monolingual, then use a regional flag, and if it is supposed to be a neutral dialect, then use the flag the language is from. That's it. It is not that hard. Now stop using the Portuguese flag to portray Brazilian Portuguese. I think both Brazilians and Portuguese would appreciate that. Now go check out Name Explains video on this topic, because that's what inspired me to do this video.